The Jedi, legendary peacekeepers, masters of the Force, and somehow experts at making life complicated, their story stretches across thousands of years, filled with conflicts, battles, and enough trust issues to fill a star system. We're going to cover the entire Jedi timeline in chronological order, from their beginnings on Tython, through their rise, fall, and eventual rebirth. So sit back, grab a snack, and let the galaxy fade around you. And if you enjoy slow journeys through strange history, feel free to subscribe. Now, let's begin. The real beginning of the Jedi story doesn't look anything like the movies. If you really rewind the galaxy's history, all the way back 25,000 years before Luke ever complained about Tatooine, you land in a very different era. An era where the Force was still something new, where people didn't even agree on what it meant, and where survival was just as important as philosophy. It all started with a group that most fans never even hear about, the Jedi. And no, that's not me mispronouncing Jedi. It's spelled with an apostrophe in the middle, and it marks a very different philosophy. They were gathered on a single world called Tython. Now, Tython wasn't an ordinary planet. If most planets are like a classroom, Tython was more like a crash course with the hardest teacher you can imagine. The planet was saturated with the Force. The way they even got to Tython is a mystery in itself. Across the galaxy, these strange pyramid-shaped ships appeared, called the Thoyor. Nobody really knows who built them. Some say it was an ancient species older than anything we can name. These ships showed up silently, almost like they had minds of their own. They called out to people with a strong connection to the Force, not only humans, but Twi'leks, Wookiees, Cathar, Mirielans, dozens of species. The Thoyor gathered them up and brought them to Tython, and so this strange mix of beings had to figure out how to survive. That planet was the definition of tough love. Tython was drenched in the Force. Everything about it, the land, the sky, the wildlife, was sensitive to shifts between light and dark. If the balance tipped too far in either direction, the planet itself reacted. Storms would tear across the surface, earthquakes would rip open valleys, lightning would fall from the sky. Their philosophy grew directly from the world they lived on. Later, Jedi would split the Force into light side and dark side, with strict rules about avoiding darkness at all costs. But the Jedi saw things differently. For them, the Force had two halves that were equally important. Too much passion and anger, and you'd fall into chaos. Too much serenity and detachment, and you'd become weak. Balance was the key. They weren't interested in picking a side. They were interested in walking the middle path. To enforce this, they developed a pretty unusual system. If a Jedi leaned too far into the dark side, let's say they got too power-hungry or violent, they'd be exiled to the moon of Bogan. It was a dark, bleak place where they could meditate and confront their inner demons until they found balance again. On the flip side, if someone became too wrapped up in the light, too selfless, too detached, basically floating away into holier-than-thou mode, they'd be exiled to the moon of Ashla. That moon forced them to ground themselves again. Imagine being punished for being too good. That's how serious they were about balance. To them, leaning too far either way was dangerous. Life on Tython revolved around this idea. The Jedi built 12 great temples across the planet, each focused on different aspects of the Force. These weren't like the polished Jedi temples we see later with clean lines and shiny floors. These were rugged ancient structures, carved into mountains or rising out of valleys, each one with its own personality. One temple focused on martial arts, another on healing, another on knowledge, another on meditation. Apprentices would travel between them throughout their training, learning a bit of everything. It was less like a strict academy and more like a travelling university where every stop taught you a new perspective. A Jedi apprentice's day might look very different from what you imagine for a Jedi Padawan. In the morning, they might meditate by a waterfall, trying to feel the flow of energy in the current. In the afternoon, they might fight off a massive beast that attacked the settlement. In the evening, they'd sit with a master and debate philosophy by torchlight. It was a constant mix of survival, combat, and reflection. Tython demanded it. You couldn't just sit around and chant about balance. The world forced you to live it. And technology at this time? Nowhere near as advanced as the Jedi would later have. Lightsabers didn't exist yet. The closest thing they had were Force sabers, primitive weapons that used dark side energy to create a blade. They were unstable and dangerous, often as much a threat to the wielder as to their opponent. Using one required immense concentration, and even then, it could blow up in your face. Many Jedi preferred to stick with more traditional weapons, metal swords, staffs, bows, enhanced by their Force abilities. The Force's saber was more of a risky experiment, and it reflected the era perfectly. Raw, dangerous, and still figuring things out. Of course, with so many species and philosophies packed onto one planet, disagreements were inevitable. Not everyone agreed on what balance meant. Some thought you had to embrace passion and power to truly understand the Force. Others believed serenity and restraint were the path to wisdom. The ones in the middle tried to hold it all together, but it wasn't easy. They had duels, arguments, even small wars among themselves. These weren't the galaxy-spanning conflicts of later eras, but they left scars. And slowly, the seeds were planted for the eventual split between Jedi and Sith. They also had a very different relationship with the Force than later Jedi would. They didn't see emotions as inherently dangerous. Anger, fear, love, joy, all of it was part of life, and all of it could fuel the Force if used carefully. Later, Jedi would preach detachment, avoiding attachments, suppressing feelings, but the Jedi embraced the messiness of being alive. Their challenge was not to cut themselves off from emotions, but to balance them so none of them took over completely. It was a messier philosophy, but maybe also a little more human. And the culture they built was fascinating. Because they came from so many different species and backgrounds, a Wookiee Jedi might train alongside a human, while a Twi'lek debated philosophy with a Mirialan. Their temples were filled with different languages, customs, and traditions. Over time, they blended together into something unique. The Jedi didn't belong to any single species or planet. They belonged to Tython and to the Force that bound them there. They trained generations of apprentices, built monuments and temples, and expanded their understanding of the Force. But the tension never really went away. Some of them kept leaning further toward darkness, chasing power and ambition. Others leaned further into the light, seeking purity and detachment. The balance that had held their society together began to fracture. Conflicts grew, schisms widened, and eventually the Order would collapse under the weight of its contradictions. But that collapse is another part of the story. What matters here is that this was the foundation. They were the first to study the Force seriously, the first to build a society around it, the first to try living by its principles. And while their philosophy of balance didn't survive in its original form, echoes of it kept resurfacing throughout history. Thousands of years later, Jedi would still talk about balance. Sith would still preach about passion and power. Both sides were, in some way, arguing over the same lessons first learned on Tython. This system worked. For ages it worked. It produced incredibly well-rounded, powerful, and wise individuals. But it had a critical weakness. It was fragile. It was a high-wire act. It only took one generation to lose the plot, for the nuance to be forgotten, for the message to get corrupted. And that's exactly what started to happen. A new movement began to grow within the Jedi. Let's call them the Purists. They looked at the history of their own order, the occasional ranger who fell to the dark side, the wars they'd had to help stop. And they came to a different conclusion. They started to see Bogan not as a natural part of the Force, but as a corruption of it, a cancer, a poison that had to be excised, not balanced. Their argument was seductive, especially to the young and the idealistic. It was simpler, cleaner. Why are we tolerating this darkness? Why are we even allowing it a seat at the table? Look at the pain it causes. The solution isn't to balance it. The solution is to destroy it, to reject it utterly. They began to preach a doctrine of pure light. They started calling themselves Jedi, a new name for a new purified beginning. The traditionalists, the Jedi who held to the old ways, were horrified. To them, this wasn't progress. It was a dangerous oversimplification. It was like saying, because you can drown in water, you should never drink it again. They argued that by refusing to understand the darkness, by trying to wall it off, the purists were making themselves vulnerable to it. You can't fight an enemy you refuse to study. The debate started in the meditation halls, then they moved to the public forums, then they turned into shouting matches. The tension on Tython became unbearable. The Force storms, which were once occasional corrections, became near constant. The planet was sick. It was reacting to the spiritual sickness of its children. The two factions couldn't coexist. They were fundamentally incompatible. It finally exploded into open conflict, the Force Wars. This wasn't a war against an external enemy. This was a Jedi civil war, 1,000 generations before the one we know. It was brutal, intimate, and tragic. It was master against apprentice, sibling against sibling. Lightsabers clashed in the very halls where they were first forged. The Force was used not for exploration or healing, but for violence. The Jedi, who had always sought balance, were now completely consumed by the very extremes they sought to manage. The Jedi, the light side purists, they defeated the traditionalists and those who had fully embraced the dark side. The victory was absolute, but the cost was unimaginable. Their home was in ruins, physically and spiritually. Tython was scarred by the conflict, its energy field thrown into a permanent state of dissonance. The Jedi realized they could no longer stay there. The planet of balance could no longer tolerate their philosophy of purity. They were exiles by their own actions. So they left. They gathered what they could salvage, holocrons, artifacts, the seeds of knowledge, and they embarked on a great exodus. They found a new world, Ossus. And it was here, on this blank slate, that they built the Jedi Order from the ground up, based entirely on their new, rigid principles. Ossus was everything Tython wasn't. The Force there was a gentle, warm light, not a raging storm. It was the perfect place to build their fortress of light, and build it they did. The great library of Ossus became the center of the known galaxy for knowledge. It said, "We gather all knowledge, but we will now filter it through our new lens. We will decide what is safe to know." This is where they wrote the Jedi Code. There is no emotion, there is peace. This is where the stereotype of the emotionless Jedi monk comes from. They weren't born that way. They made a conscious, traumatic decision to be that way because they were terrified of where emotion had led them on Tython. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge, there is no passion, there is serenity. This is the big one. Passion, raw, intense feeling, was the engine of the dark side. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. It was a beautiful, comforting idea, but even this took on a new meaning. They systemized everything. The training of younglings became standardized. The initiation rituals, like the gathering where young Padawans had to find their Kyber crystal, were designed to test their commitment to the new code. The lightsaber was perfected from a clunky tool into the elegant weapon we know. The construction of it became a weeks-long meditation, a ritual embodying peace, knowledge, serenity, and harmony. The weapon itself became a symbol of their new identity. And they didn't stay on Ossus, they expanded, they formed a partnership with the growing Galactic Republic. This was a masterstroke, and also their biggest compromise. The Republic offered stability, resources, and a purpose. The Jedi offered moral authority and an incredible police force. They became the guardians of peace and justice in the Republic. They built enclaves and temples on countless worlds. Coruscant, Dantooine, Ilum, Corellia. This was their golden age. They were explorers, healers, diplomats, and yes, warriors when they had to be. The galaxy seemed to be entering a new era of enlightenment, all guided by the wise, serene hand of the Jedi Order. But, and this is the biggest but in history, in their desperate flight from the complexity of balance, they created 3 fatal flaws they baked right into their foundation. First, the flaw of dogma. By making their code so rigid, they left no room for nuance. Life is messy. People feel things. A Jedi who felt a moment of anger or fear wouldn't see it as a natural human emotion to be understood. They'd see it as a personal failure, a shameful secret. This created immense internal pressure. It meant that when a Jedi did fall, they often fell hard and fast because they had no practice in managing their darker impulses. They'd been taught to pretend they didn't exist until the dam finally broke. Second, the flaw of connection. The Jedi, in their temples, became separate from the galaxy they served. They lived in serene, controlled environments and then went out into the messy, emotional, passionate world to fix problems. This risked making them arrogant. They could become judges from on high, disconnected from the very people they were meant to protect. How can you understand a farmer's fear for his family if you've taught yourself that fear doesn't exist? Third, and most crucially, the flaw of assumption. The Jedi truly believed they had won. They thought the Force Wars had settled the argument. They believed the dark side had been defeated, its followers exiled and scattered. They declared victory and stopped looking for the enemy. They became complacent. They curated their library and patrolled the star lanes, believing the only thing left to do was manage the light. They were catastrophically wrong. Those exiles, the Jedi traditionalists and the dark siders they cast out, they were scattered, bitter and powerful. Their journey is an epic tale of its own, a long dark exodus through the outer void. They were hardened by their exile, their belief in balance twisted into a hunger for power, and they eventually found a world, a hot, red, miserable planet deep in the unknown regions called Korriban. And on Korriban they found a species that was already naturally, deeply attuned to the dark side, the Sith, a proud, violent warrior species with a natural aptitude for Force magic. These exiled Jedi didn't come in peace. They came with the power of the dark side and technology the primitive Sith could scarcely imagine. They didn't try to balance with the Sith. They conquered them. They used their power to make themselves gods. They subjugated the Sith species, intermarried with them, and declared themselves Dark Lords. Over generations, the word Sith stopped meaning a species and started meaning an order, the Sith Order, and their entire culture was built on a foundation of hatred for the Jedi who had exiled them. It was a grudge that festered for millennia, growing in secret, getting stronger and more twisted in the dark, while the Jedi, on their beautiful world of Ossus, basked in the light and believed the galaxy was safe. The founding of the Jedi Order was an incredible achievement. It was a triumph of idealism and order over chaos. They built something magnificent and lasting, but it was a victory that contained the seeds of its own eventual destruction. In trying to eliminate the darkness, they became blind to it. They built a perfect, brilliant castle in the light of the sun, and they were so busy admiring their beautiful walls that they never once looked behind them to see the long, long shadow they were casting. These guys from Korriban, the exiles, triggered a new war later on, and this, my friend, is the story of the Great Hyperspace War. The first time the Jedi truly understood that the monster under the bed was real, and it was pissed. It starts with two siblings who were, to put it kindly, in way over their heads. Gav and Jori Darrigan. They were hyperspace route prospectors, which is a fancy way of saying they were gamblers with a starship. Their job was to find new, faster paths through the chaos of hyperspace for the Republic. It was dangerous, thankless work, and they were broke. So broke that they had to pawn their own mother's valuables to fund their last desperate mission. You can already see how this is going to go, right? Desperation is like a welcome mat for the dark side. Their ship, the Starbreaker 12, was a piece of junk. Its hyperdrive was held together with hope and spare parts. They plotted a crazy, risky route into the unknown regions, fired it up, and something went wrong. Spectacularly wrong. The hyperdrive didn't just fail, it had a catastrophic malfunction. Instead of flying a path, they were thrown through a random, chaotic rift in space. They were spit out, battered and disoriented in a star system that wasn't on any chart. The red, angry world that filled their view was Korriban. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the Sith. You've been isolated for a millennium. Your entire history is about the Jedi who wronged you. Suddenly, this weird, advanced ship just appears out of nowhere, right above your homeworld. You'd think it was an invasion, too. The Sith captured Gav and Jori immediately. They were dragged before the Sith Council. The Sith Emperor, Marka Ragnos, had just died, and a power vacuum was tearing the council apart. The two main players were Naga Sadow, an ambitious, power-hungry sorcerer who craved conquest, and Ludo Kresh, a traditionalist who wanted the Sith to remain hidden and strong in their own territory. Naga Sadow saw the Darrigans not as a threat, but as a gift, an opportunity. He looked at these two terrified kids from an advanced civilization, and his mind went straight to one thing: invasion. He believed they were scouts for the Republic. He secretly took them under his wing, not as prisoners, but as, well, pets. He used his Sith sorcery to probe their minds, learning everything he could about the Republic, its wealth, its worlds, its weakness. He learned about the Jedi, and his hatred burned even brighter. He was especially fascinated by Gav Darrigan. Gav was strong in the Force, but untrained, brimming with fear and anxiety. Sadow started manipulating him, twisting him, feeding his insecurities and turning him into a loyal servant. Jory, on the other hand, was more strong-willed. She saw Sado for the manipulator he was and tried to warn her brother, but Gav was in too deep. Sado needed a pretext to launch his war, to unite the Sith under his banner. So he staged one. He arranged for Jory to escape and had his forces fake an attack on Korriban, making it look like a Republic invasion fleet had arrived. The Sith Council, in a panic, turned to the strong-willed Sado for leadership. He got exactly what he wanted, declared the Dark Lord of the Sith, and given command to launch a preemptive war against the Republic. This is where the war truly begins. Sado did something insane. He retreated to a secret meditation sphere hidden in a red dwarf star. Using ancient Sith magic and incredible dark side power, he began to create illusions. Massive, terrifying illusions of a Sith war fleet. We're talking thousands of ships, countless warriors, but most of it was a mirage, a psychological weapon. Hidden within this illusion was his real, much smaller, but still deadly fleet. He opened up a hyperspace route based on the Darragon's path and invaded. The first target was the world of Primus Galud. The Republic and the Jedi were, to put it mildly, completely blindsided. The reports flooding into Coruscant and Ossus must have sounded like madness. The initial attacks were devastating. The Sith warbeasts, their magic, their sheer ferocity. It was nothing the Republic had ever faced. The Republic military, more of a peacekeeping force than a war machine, was routed. Panic spread through the core worlds. On Ossus, the Jedi Council was reeling. This was the thing they thought they'd eliminated. They had to become soldiers overnight. Jedi Masters like the legendary Odan-Ur, a precocious and incredibly knowledgeable historian, urged caution. He had actually had a vision of this very war, a vision he'd tried to warn everyone about and was ignored. Now, his nightmare was real. The Jedi rallied, they joined the Republic fleet. Lightsabers clashed with Sith swords. The Force was used in open combat on a scale never seen before, but they were fighting shadows. Sado's illusions made his forces seem endless. Every time they thought they'd destroyed a ship, it might just flicker and disappear, while a real one attacked from another vector. It was chaotic, terrifying warfare. Meanwhile, Jory Darragon, who had escaped, finally made it back to Republic space and told everyone the truth. The fleet was mostly fake. It was a trick. This was the turning point. The Republic and Jedi leaders realized they weren't fighting a war of attrition. They were fighting a war against a magician. They had to break his concentration. The key was finding Sado's secret base. A task force, led by the Jedi and including Jory, went hunting for the meditation sphere. And back in Sado's fleet, his rival, Ludo Kresh, who had never trusted this plan, chose this moment to make his move. He turned on Sado, declaring him a traitor. The Sith fleet, already a delicate mix of illusion and reality, now started fighting itself. It was the classic Sith flaw. They couldn't help but betray each other. The Republic task force found the meditation sphere. In a desperate battle, they attacked it. The assault, combined with Kresh's betrayal, shattered Naga Sado's concentration. The intricate web of dark side energy he was holding together snapped. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The massive illusionary fleet simply vanished. The real Sith ships, suddenly exposed and outnumbered, were quickly overwhelmed. But the real chaos was on Sado's end. The feedback from the broken spell, combined with the attack on his sphere, caused the red dwarf star he was hiding to go supernova. Sado, in a last-ditch effort to save himself, barely escaped with a handful of ships, fleeing back into the unknown regions. The Republic had won. The invasion was over. The immediate threat was gone. But this is where the story gets really interesting, and where the true, long-term consequences are laid bare. The Jedi, flush with victory, made a fateful decision. They believed the Sith were finished again. They'd destroyed their fleet, their leader was on the run, and they assumed their empire had collapsed. They decided to go on the offensive. To make sure the Sith could never threaten them again, they launched a counter-invasion. They followed the route back to Korriban. What they found was a homeworld. They found the Sith species. Soldiers, yes, but also civilians. The Jedi and Republic forces, fueled by a righteous anger and a fresh memory of the terror the Sith had inflicted, didn't see a people. They saw a virus, that needed to be eradicated. The campaign on Korriban and other Sith worlds wasn't a battle. It was a purge, a genocide. They razed cities. They destroyed temples. They tried to scrub the Sith from the galaxy. In their minds, they were ensuring peace. The Jedi, the pure, serene guardians of light, were capable of incredible violence. They were motivated by fear of the dark side's return. And in trying to destroy what they feared, they became ruthless. This had two earth-shattering consequences. They didn't get everyone. The Jedi believed the purge was complete. It wasn't. A few key Sith Lords survived. Naga Sadow himself escaped with a loyal contingent to the jungle moon of Yavin 4, where he would later entomb himself, waiting for a future return. More importantly, a young, terrifyingly powerful Sith named Vitiate survived. He witnessed the Jedi Purge. He saw their light up close, and the experience didn't break him. It forged his hatred into an unbreakable diamond. He would go on to become the Sith Emperor, who would plague the galaxy for over 1,000 years, biding his time in the deepest shadows. The Jedi, in their ruthless efficiency, had created their most patient and deadly enemy. They broke their own code. The purge on Korriban was an act of passion, of fear, of anger. It was the opposite of peace, serenity, and harmony. It was the dark side, wearing a Jedi robe. This created a deep spiritual wound within the Jedi Order itself. They had to live with what they'd done. To justify it, they had to double down on their dogma. They had to become even more rigid, even more fearful of the dark side, because they had seen its reflection in their own actions. The Great Hyperspace War didn't make the Jedi stronger. It made them more fragile, more afraid. It set them on the path to the rigid, out-of-touch order we see in the prequels. Alright, so the dust has settled from the Great Hyperspace War. 1,000 years have passed. That's like from the Middle Ages to today. For the Jedi Order, that's a long, long time to get comfortable. They've built their temples higher, filled their libraries with more knowledge, and become even more entrenched as the guardians of the Republic. The Sith? They're a ghost story, a scary tale from the history holobooks. They're not a real threat. They're a problem that was solved, definitively, a millennium ago. This sense of security, this absolute certainty in their own righteousness, is like a disease. It makes you slow, it makes you arrogant, and most dangerously, it makes you blind to the rot growing within your own house. Because the dark side doesn't always come from the outside with a fleet of warships. Sometimes it doesn't need to. Sometimes the most fertile ground for the dark side isn't on some distant evil world. It's in the heart of a bored, brilliant, and arrogant Jedi prodigy who thinks he knows better than everyone else. This is the story of Exar Kun. It's the story of the Jedi Order's failure on almost every single level. This is the Sith War. Our guy, Exar Kun, is a poster child for Jedi privilege. He's young, powerful, incredibly gifted, and he knows it. He's the kind of student who aces every test without studying and then complains that the classes are too easy. He's bored, and for someone as powerful as he is, boredom is incredibly dangerous. He starts to believe the rules are for other, less talented people. He starts digging into the restricted sections of the Jedi archives. He's looking for the good stuff, the powerful stuff, the stuff the Masters have locked away because it's too dangerous. He becomes obsessed with the history of the Sith, not as a cautionary tale, but as a manual. He's fascinated by their power. He starts to believe that the Jedi, in their fear, have deliberately weakened themselves by rejecting this knowledge. He's the guy who sees a high-voltage sign on a fence and decides to climb over, because he's sure he won't get shocked. His first stop is the planet Onderon. There's an ancient beastmaster there named Freedon Nad. Now, Nad had been a dark Jedi who found the tomb of Naga Sadow. That guy from the last war learned Sith magic and set himself up as a king. He'd been dead for centuries, but his tomb was still pulsing with dark side energy. Exar Kun, in his infinite wisdom, goes there to loot the place. He's not reading about the dark side now. He's literally dancing on its grave. And the dark side notices him. It's like a shark smelling blood in the water. The spirit of Freedon Nad himself starts whispering to Kun, feeding his ego, encouraging his rebellion. The Jedi are holding you back, it whispers. Their code is a cage. I can show you true power. And Kun, the arrogant kid who thinks he's in control, eats it up. He thinks he's using Nad's spirit. He has no idea He's being played like a fiddle. He gets a taste of that power, and he wants more. His next destination is Korriban, the ancient homeworld of the Sith, the place the Jedi purged 1,000 years before. It's a cursed, desolate wasteland, a monument to failure. The air is thick with echoes of pain and hatred, and Exar Kun walks right into the heart of it. He finds the tomb of the Sith King, Ajunta Pal, and here he makes his choice. He doesn't study the dark side, he embraces it. He pledges himself to it. In that tomb, the spirit of Freedom Nad reveals his true master, the long-dead Dark Lord, Marka Ragnos. The ghost of Ragnos appears, and in a twisted ceremony, he anoints Exar Kun as the new Dark Lord of the Sith. This isn't just a fall from grace, it's a coronation. But Kun isn't the only one. There's another Jedi Knight out there who's on a similar path. His name is Ulic Qel-Droma. Ulic's story is different. He's not driven by arrogance and boredom. He's driven by passion and a desire to do good. He gets involved in a nasty war on the planet Onderon, the same place Kun found Nad's tomb, and he sees the Jedi's passive ways as ineffective. He starts making compromises. He uses aggression. He embraces his emotions to win battles. He thinks he's using the dark side as a tool for the greater good. Exar Kun seeks out Ulic. He sees a kindred spirit, another powerful Jedi chafing under the Order's restrictions. He corrupts Ulic, not by fighting him, but by appealing to his frustration. He shows him the power of the Sith. He offers him a partnership. And Ulic, who already feels the Jedi have failed, crosses the line. He becomes Kun's apprentice. The two most promising Jedi of their generation are now the new Sith Lords. This is the ultimate Jedi betrayal. It wasn't some outsider, it was their own best and brightest. And the Jedi Order was completely, utterly blindsided. They never saw it coming because they were too busy being certain of their own infallibility. Now the war begins, and it's brutal because it's so personal. Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma know all the Jedi's secrets. They know their strategies. They know their weaknesses. They know the layout of the temples. Kun uses Sith sorcery to brainwash other young, disaffected Jedi, turning them into his Massassi warriors. Twisted, monstrous versions of their former selves. He sets up his base on Yavin 4, in the same temples Naga Sadow built 1,000 years before. Ulic Qel-Droma becomes the military strategist. He launches a campaign that tears the Republic apart. He turns planet against planet, Jedi against Jedi. The galaxy descends into chaos. The Jedi Council is in a state of panic and disbelief. Their entire world is collapsing from the inside. They send their best to stop them, including a legendary Jedi named Master Arca. Ulic Qel-Droma murders Master Arca, his own teacher, in cold blood. This act severs Ulic's last connection to his old life. He is fully Sith now. The war reaches its climax at the Jedi Library on Ossus, the very heart of Jedi knowledge. Exar Kun goes there not to conquer it, but to destroy it. He wants to burn down 1,000 years of history, to erase the light so only his darkness remains. The Battle of Ossus is a catastrophe. Jedi fight their brainwashed brothers and sisters. Ancient holocrons are shattered. Priceless knowledge is lost forever. The turning point comes through Ulic Qel-Droma's own brother, Kay. Kay, who had stayed true to the light, finally confronts Ulic. Kay's pure, selfless love for his brother does what no Jedi Master could do. It breaks through Ulic's darkness. For a moment, Ulic sees the monster he's become. He is captured by the Jedi, and in a final act of justice, they strip him of his connection to the Force. He is left alive, but empty. A mortal man forced to live with the memory of his terrible crimes. But Exar Kun is still out there. The Jedi, led by a council that includes the wise old historian Odan-Ur, who had foreseen all of this and was ignored, realize they can't defeat him in a straight fight. His power is too great, so they do something desperate. They don't attack him. They attack his connection to the Force itself. The entire Jedi Order gathers, every single Jedi Knight and Master. They don't form a battle line. They form a meditation circle, a network of light, and they focus all of their collective energy, their will, their spirit not on Exar Kun's body, but on his very essence. They perform a ritual of banishment. They create a wall of light so pure, so absolute, that it severs Kun's spirit from the living Force and traps it within the temples of Yavin 4. They don't kill him, they imprison him. For 4,000 years, his angry, disembodied spirit would haunt those temples. The Sith War was over. The Republic was saved, but the cost was apocalyptic. The Jedi Order was shattered. Their numbers were decimated. Their greatest library was in ruins. Their home on Ossus was abandoned. Their confidence was broken. The galaxy had seen that the Jedi, the supposed guardians of peace, could produce the very monsters they were meant to fight. The lesson they learned from Exar Kun was the wrong one, again. They didn't see it as a failure of their rigid, dogmatic system that pushed brilliant students toward rebellion. They saw it as proof that they needed to be even more rigid, even more restrictive, even more fearful of emotion and passion. They doubled down on their dogma, building higher walls around their hearts. They became more insular, more distrustful, more afraid of any Jedi who showed too much individuality or power. They also made another fatal assumption. They believed that with Exar Kun trapped and Ulic Qel-Droma neutralized, the Sith were gone. Again. They thought the lineage ended there. The story of the Sith is a story of a cockroach surviving a nuclear blast. As the Jedi were cleaning up the rubble, a single, surviving apprentice of Exar Kun escaped. A man who had learned the secrets of the Sith. He vanished into the unknown reaches of the galaxy, taking the teachings with him. The Sith lineage didn't end with Exar Kun. It went underground. It became a ghost, waiting for the next arrogant, power-hungry individual to find it. The Exar Kun thing was a mess, right? The Jedi Order is licking its wounds. They're trying to rebuild, trying to figure out how something like that could have happened from within. They're putting padlocks on the restricted sections of the archives, giving each other stern looks, and basically promising to be even more strict and unfeeling, so nothing like that ever happens again. They think they've learned their lesson. But they haven't. They've just gotten better at hiding the problem, because the core issue is still there. The Jedi Code is a straitjacket. It demands perfection in a galaxy that is gloriously, chaotically imperfect. It tells Jedi to feel nothing in situations where any normal person would feel everything. And eventually, that pressure has to go somewhere. For Exar Kun, it exploded outwards in a quest for personal power. For the next guy, it's going to explode outwards in a quest to actually, genuinely help people. This is the era of the Knights of the Old Republic, and it all revolves around one of the most famous, complicated, and tragic figures in Jedi history, a man named Revan. To understand Revan, you have to understand what happened right after the Exar Kun War. A new threat emerged, and it was nothing like the Sith, the Mandalorians. Now, the Mandalorians aren't Force users. They don't care about the dark side or the light side. Their religion is strength. Their culture is war. They are the most formidable, relentless, and brutal warriors in the galaxy. And they're not interested in conquest for territory or power. They're interested in conquest for the sheer glory of the fight. They believe that testing your strength against the strongest opponent is the highest form of honor. So the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders, led by the fearsome Mandalore the Ultimate, start carving a path through the Outer Rim. They hit world after world, and it's not a war, it's a slaughter. They're wiping out entire planetary populations. The Republic military is getting its teeth kicked in. They're desperate. They're begging for the Jedi to step in, and the Jedi Council says no. They refuse to get involved. Their reasoning? They're still recovering from the Exar Kun War. They're afraid. They see the Mandalorians as a provocation, a trap. They think that if the Jedi join the war, the passion and violence of the battlefield will lead them right back to the dark side. They're so terrified of repeating the past that they decide to do nothing. They're going to sit in their temples on Coruscant and Dantooine, while millions of innocent people are being massacred on the Outer Rim. You can imagine how that went over with the younger Jedi. They're hearing these horrific reports. They're feeling the echoes of suffering and death through the Force, and their masters are telling them to meditate on it, to find serenity, to ignore it. This is where Revan comes in. Revan wasn't just a powerful Jedi. He was a prodigy, a strategic genius, a natural leader. He looked at the councils in action and didn't see wisdom. He saw cowardice. He saw a failure of the Jedi's most basic duty, to protect the innocent. So Revan did the unthinkable. He stood up in front of the Jedi Council and said, essentially, "You're wrong. And I'm not going to stand by and let this happen." and he walked out. Dozens, then hundreds of Jedi Knights and Masters, the best and brightest of the new generation, walked out with him. They chose to defy the Council. They chose to break the Jedi Code. They chose to go to war. This was the single greatest schism in the Jedi Order since the founding on Tython. The Jedi were torn in two, the Loyalists who stayed with the Council, and the Revanchists who followed Revan to war. The Mandalorian Wars were brutal. Revan and his Jedi did what the Republic military couldn't. They adopted Mandalorian tactics. They fought without mercy. They made sacrifices. They got their hands dirty. And they started winning. Revan's strategies were brilliant, but they were also cold. He was willing to sacrifice a battalion to save a system. He was making the calculations that the Jedi Council had been too afraid to even consider. And his right-hand man through all of this was a Jedi named Malak. Malak was everything Revan wasn't. Where Revan was calculating and charismatic, Malak was blunt and brutal. He was the hammer to Revan's scalpel. He believed in Revan completely, but his loyalty was fueled by a thirst for action and glory that Revan himself didn't share. They won the war. The final battle was at Malachor 5, a planet that became a graveyard. Revan engineered a horrific superweapon, the mass shadow generator, that literally tore the planet apart, destroying the entire Mandalorian fleet and most of his own fleet in the process. It was a victory of unimaginable cost. The Mandalorians were broken, but so was Revan's army, and so was Revan. This is the crucial moment. The war is over. Revan and Malak and the Jedi who followed them are victorious heroes to the Republic, but they are also war criminals to the Jedi Council. They are drowning in the darkness of what they've done. They've spent years in violence, making life and death decisions, surrounded by pain and fear and anger. And in that vulnerable state, something found them. Out in the Outer Rim, past the areas they had liberated, Revan and Malak went exploring. And they found it. The true Sith Empire, not the ghost of Exar Kun, but a real, living, breathing empire that had been hiding and growing for 1,000 years since the Great Hyperspace War, ruled by the ancient and terrifying Sith Emperor Vitiate. Revan and Malak, in their pride, thought they could confront this evil. They were wrong. Vitiate was an order of magnitude more powerful than anything they had ever faced. He didn't destroy them. He didn't need to. He simply unmade them. He reached into their minds with the dark side and shattered them. He hollowed them out and filled them with his own will. He showed them the power of the dark side, not as a temptation, but as an inevitability. He broke them, and then he remade them in his own image. Revan and Malak fell. They became Sith Lords. Vitiate gave them a mission: return to the Republic as conquering heroes. Learn its secrets. Find the Star Forge, an ancient mythical space station that could build an endless fleet, and use it to tear the Republic apart from within. So they returned. But they weren't heroes anymore. They were wolves in sheep's clothing. They took the veterans of the Mandalorian Wars, the soldiers and Jedi who had followed them out of idealism, and they corrupted them too. They became the new Sith Empire. Revan was now Darth Revan, the Dark Lord. Malak was Darth Malak, his apprentice. The Jedi Civil War began. It was even more horrific than the Mandalorian Wars because it was brother against brother. The very Jedi who had defied the Council to save the Republic were now using everything they learned to destroy it. Revan's strategic genius, which had saved worlds, was now used to conquer them. Malak's brutality, once focused on a foreign enemy, was now turned on his own people. The Jedi Council was faced with the ultimate nightmare. Their greatest failure had created their greatest enemy. The Jedi they had cast out for being too passionate, too emotional, too human, had now become the very thing they feared most. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy of the highest order. The war was going badly for the Republic. Revan was too smart, too unpredictable. Then, in a pivotal space battle, Malak saw an opportunity. In a moment of pure Sith betrayal, he turned his flagship's guns on Revan's command ship, aiming to kill his master and take the title of Dark Lord for himself. He almost succeeded. Revan's ship was destroyed, but Revan himself was found alive by a Jedi strike team, led by a Jedi Knight named Bastila Shan. Bastila had a rare gift: battle meditation. She could influence the outcome of a vast battle by influencing the morale and coordination of entire fleets. She was the Republic's last hope, And when they found Revan, he was alive, but his mind was a blank slate. The Jedi Council saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a chance for a do-over. They could reprogram this blank slate. They could take the most brilliant strategic mind of the age and turn it back to the light. They implanted a new identity in his head. They made him believe he was a Republic soldier, and they sent him out with Bastila Shan and a crew on a mission to stop the Sith, all the while secretly hoping he would eventually remember enough of his strategic knowledge to help them win without remembering his fall. It was an insane, desperate, and deeply unethical plan. But it was all they had. So this amnesiac Revan, this created persona, goes on a journey across the galaxy. He makes friends. He falls in love with Bastila. He helps people. He starts to become the hero he was always meant to be, all over again. And along the way, he discovers the truth. He pieces together his own history. He learns he is Darth Revan. His memory is back. He knows who he is and what he's done. The weight of that, it's unimaginable. Most people would crack under a fraction of that guilt. They'd run, they'd hide, they'd maybe even throw themselves into the nearest star. But Revan doesn't. He makes a choice. He looks at the monster he was and the man he became, and he decides that the man he became is more real. His redemption isn't some magic spell the Jedi cast on him. It's a conscious daily decision. It's him choosing to use his knowledge, his genius, for good. He's not trying to erase Darth Revan. He's trying to build something better on top of the ruins. He's a hero to the Republic, but he's a walking crisis for the Jedi Council. What do you do with him? He's the ultimate paradox. He's their greatest savior and their greatest failure. He's a living reminder that their code failed, that their inaction created him, and that their secret manipulative plan to use him was deeply unethical. He's proof that their entire system is flawed. Do they welcome him back with open arms? Do they put him on the council? A lot of the common people and the soldiers would probably say yes, but the old masters, they're terrified. They see a man who has seen both sides, who understands the dark side, not as a theoretical evil, but as a practical tool. That kind of knowledge is dangerous. It's contagious. They're afraid his mere presence will corrupt others. They're afraid because he represents a path they don't understand and can't control. So they don't really know what to do with him. There's no protocol for this. Eventually, Revan himself makes the choice for them. He can't just go back to the temple and pretend to be a normal Jedi. He has too much work to do. He knows the true Sith Empire is still out there. So he defeated Malak and brought an end to his Sith expansion. The war he just finished was just a proxy war, a skirmish. The real threat is still waiting. So he leaves. He goes back out into the unknown regions, not to fall but to fight, to scout the enemy, to protect the Republic from the shadows. Now, let's talk about the Jedi Order itself. Oh man, they are a mess. Physically, their numbers are devastated. The Jedi Civil War wasn't against an outside enemy, it was Jedi killing Jedi. The Sith armies were led by Revan and Malak, but the soldiers were the Jedi and Republic troops who followed them to war against the Mandalorians. It was a fratricide. The temples are damaged, the ranks are thin, but the physical damage is nothing compared to the philosophical damage. The Jedi Order's confidence is shattered. Their entire worldview has been proven wrong. Think about it. Their refusal to fight the Mandalorians, their principled stand, directly led to Revan's rebellion. Their fear of passion and emotion created a situation where the most compassionate of their Jedi felt they had to leave to do the right thing. And then, those same Jedi fell to the dark side and nearly destroyed everything. Then, their solution was to brainwash Revan and send him on a mission under false pretenses. That's not the Jedi way. That's the sort of manipulative, ends justify the means thinking they accuse the Sith of. They broke their own code to fix a problem they created by breaking their code. It's a spiral of failure, so now they have to rebuild. But how? Do they just build everything back exactly the way it was? The way that caused all these problems in the first place? This is the central crisis of the aftermath. A new generation of Jedi Masters has to rise from the ashes. People like Atris, a historian who becomes so fearful of the dark side that she starts hoarding Sith artifacts to keep them safe, which is of course a terrible idea. And others like Master Zim, who advocate for a more compassionate, understanding approach. They're trying to answer impossible questions. How do you teach about the dark side without tempting students? How do you allow for emotion without risking fall? How do you serve the Republic without becoming its soldiers? They don't have the answers. The rebuilding is slow, painful, and filled with argument. They're trying to build a new house while the ground is still shaking. And they're not just rebuilding their order, they're trying to help the Republic rebuild. Worlds are devastated, economies are collapsed. Trust in the government and the Jedi is at an all-time low. The Jedi have to become healers and peacekeepers in a very literal sense, helping to mediate disputes over resources, helping to rebuild communities. This hands-on work is probably the best thing for them. It grounds them, it reconnects them to the people they're meant to serve, something they'd lost behind their temple walls. Okay, so we've seen the Jedi get knocked down again and again. The Great Hyperspace War, Exar Kun, Revan and Malak. Each time, they barely manage to scrape themselves off the floor, rebuild, and promise to be more careful next time. They're like a boxer who keeps getting punched in the face but never learns to keep their hands up. After the Jedi Civil War, they rebuilt. 1,000 years passed. And during that time, the Sith didn't go away, but they didn't learn their lesson either. The story of the Sith for millennia is the same story on repeat. A Dark Lord rises, gathers an army, attacks the Jedi, and then their own ambition and infighting causes them to blow themselves up. It's a cycle of self-destruction. By about 1,000 years before the movies, the Sith are at it again. They've built another massive empire to rival the Republic. They're called the Brotherhood of Darkness, and they are the perfect example of everything wrong with the Sith. This isn't a story of a noble Jedi falling to darkness. This is a story of the dark side eating its own. This is the final catastrophic failure of the old way of doing things, and it sets the stage for everything that comes next. The Brotherhood of Darkness is a mess. The name itself is a joke. There is no brotherhood. There is only ambition. The Dark Lord, a guy named Exar Kun, rules because he's the best politician. He's managed to herd all the other power-hungry Sith Lords into a loose alliance. His big idea. The Army of Light. He's trying to turn the Sith into a mirror image of the Jedi, a unified, centralized army. This is a terrible idea. The Brotherhood is a snake pit. Every Sith Lord under Khan is constantly scheming to betray him and take his place. They're all playing their own games, fighting for their own power, while pretending to work together. It's a circus. Meanwhile, the Jedi are led by a man named Lord Hoth. Yeah, Lord was still a Jedi title back then. They were a bit more martial. Hoth forms the Army of Light to counter the Brotherhood. So you have the Army of Light versus the Brotherhood of Darkness. It sounds epic, but it mostly devolves into a brutal, grinding, decade-long meat grinder known as the New Sith Wars. It's a war of attrition. There's no glory, just mud, blood, and lightsabers in the rain. Both sides are exhausted. This is where our guy comes in. This is the story of Darth Bane. He's not a tragic hero, he's a monster. But he's a monster with a vision, a genius. Bane started life as a nobody, a poor miner on a crap planet called Apatros, digging up cortosis ore in brutal conditions. His father was abusive, his life was pain. He escaped by joining the Sith army, just a grunt with a blaster. But he was strong in the Force, and that power started to wake up in the crucible of battle. He rose through the ranks, eventually getting trained as a Sith in the Brotherhood, and he hated it. He saw the hypocrisy immediately. He saw Sith Lords who were more interested in political maneuvering than true power. He saw them holding back, letting their apprentices fight so they wouldn't risk their own skins. He saw that the Brotherhood was weak. It was a lie. The Sith code, he realized, was about strength. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Brotherhood had chained itself. They had become what they hated. They had become the Jedi, but with lightning. Bane became obsessed with the ancient texts. He went looking for the true Sith, the ones from before all this nonsense. He found the holocron of Darth Revan, the real Revan, the Sith Lord, not the redeemed hero. And Revan's teachings confirmed everything he believed. The Sith needed to change, not to become more like the Jedi, but to become more purely, ruthlessly Sith. He had an epiphany. The Sith could never win as an army. Their greatest weakness was themselves. His plan was brilliant and utterly ruthless. He decided that the entire Brotherhood of Darkness had to be destroyed, not by the Jedi, by him. They were a cancer, and they needed to be cut out so the true Sith could rise from the ashes. He realized that the Sith couldn't be a government or an army. They had to become a secret, a phantom, a cancer growing inside the body of the Republic, unseen until it was too late. They couldn't win through brute force. They had to win through deception, patience, and absolute control. To do this, he created a new doctrine, the rule of two. Two there should be, no more, no less. One to embody the power, the other to crave it. This was a revolution. It solved the problem of infighting at a stroke. There would only ever be two Sith, a master and an apprentice. The master's job was to wield the power of the dark side and hoard all the knowledge. The apprentice's job was to learn from the master, to become powerful, and to eventually challenge and kill the master, taking their place. This constant cycle of betrayal wouldn't be a weakness. It would be the engine of their evolution. Each new Sith master would be stronger than the last, building on the knowledge of all who came before. The apprentice's ambition to kill the master would ensure that only the strongest, most cunning Sith would ever rise to the top. It was Darwinian evolution applied to the dark side. It was terrifyingly efficient. Now, he just had to get rid of the old model. The Brotherhood and the Army of Light were locked in their final bloody battle on a planet called Ruusan. It was a stalemate. Both sides were exhausted, throwing their last resources into the meat grinder. Bane saw his opportunity. He went to Exar Kun and the Brotherhood leadership and presented them with a super weapon. It was a thought bomb, an ancient Sith ritual that required many powerful Sith to work together. It would tap into their combined dark side energy and create a psychic explosion that would wipe out all Force sensitives on the planet, Jedi and Sith alike. Khan, desperate for a victory, fell for it. He didn't realize that the thought bomb wasn't just a weapon, it was a trap. Bane knew that the ritual would annihilate everyone involved in casting it. He was planning to wipe out the entire Brotherhood leadership in one stroke. The Brotherhood Sith gathered and began the ritual. As they channeled their combined hatred, a psychic maelstrom erupted over Ruusan. Lord Hoth and his Jedi felt it, a wave of pure, concentrated evil. They knew something terrible was happening. But Bane? He wasn't with them. At the last second, he broke his connection to the ritual. He let the Brotherhood pour all of their power, their very life essence, into the bomb, and then he walked away. The thought bomb detonated. It was a silent wave of psychic energy that swept across the planet. Every Jedi, every Sith, every Force-sensitive being on Ruusan had their spirit ripped from their body. Their minds were trapped in an eternal, tortured state within the psychic blast zone. It was a fate worse than death. The Army of Light was obliterated. The Brotherhood of Darkness was erased. In one moment, the war ended. The Jedi Order back on Coruscant felt the death of all their brothers and sisters on Ruusan. It was a psychic shockwave that nearly broke them. They believed the Sith were utterly destroyed, wiped out. Finally, after 1,000 years of war, it was over. They were wrong. Darth Bane, the last true Sith Lord, walked away from Ruusan alone. He had done it. He had personally killed every other Sith in the galaxy to prove a point. He had sacrificed thousands to create a clean slate. He found an apprentice, a young girl named Zana. He took her away from the galaxy into the shadows. He began to teach her the true ways of the Sith, not as part of an army, but as his heir. He taught her the rule of two. He taught her that their victory would not come in their lifetime, or even in their apprentice's lifetime. It might take 1,000 years, but it would be absolute. They would work in secret from the shadows, manipulating events, weakening the Republic, until the day came when the Sith were strong enough and the Jedi were weak enough to strike a single killing blow. The Jedi, in their grief and relief, declared the Sith extinct. They changed their entire order to reflect this new peaceful era. They became more political, more integrated into the Republic. They became the serene, passive monks we see in the prequels. They believed the dark side was defeated. They had no idea that the dark side had simply evolved. It had become smarter, more patient, more dangerous than ever before. Alright, take a deep breath. We need to cleanse our palate after all that Sith stuff. We've been in the mud for a while. It's time to step into the light. Literally. This is the High Republic. If the era of Darth Bane was a nightmare, this is the awakening. This is the Jedi Order not as weary soldiers or dogmatic monks, but as heroes. As actual, genuine, shining knights in white robes. This is their renaissance, their golden age, and it's a beautiful thing to see. We're about 500 years before the Phantom Menace. The galaxy is experiencing a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity. The Republic isn't just stable, it's expanding. It's an age of exploration, of art, of architecture, of big hopeful ideas. They're calling it the Great Works period. They're building new hyperspace lanes, connecting star systems that have been isolated for millennia. It's like the galaxy is waking up and introducing itself to itself. And right at the heart of it all are the Jedi. This is their moment. They are the guardians of this new era of light. They're not generals. They're not soldiers hiding in temples. They're out there. They're explorers, mediators, scientists, healers, and peacekeepers in the truest sense of the word. Imagine the Jedi Temple on Coruscant not as the somber, quiet political place we see in the prequels, but as a bustling university campus. There's energy there. Younglings are running around, not with the fearful discipline of later years, but with a sense of wonder. The archives are a place of discovery. Jedi are encouraged to seek out new knowledge, to ask big questions. Their mission statement is all about connection, connecting the new worlds to the Republic, connecting people to each other, and connecting themselves to the living Force in a way that's active and joyful. They feel the Force not as a weapon or a shield, but as a song that connects all living things. And they see their job as helping to keep that song in harmony. And their fashion sense, oh man, they get to have one. This isn't the era of utilitarian brown robes. The Jedi of the High Republic have style. They wear bright whites, deep blues, rich golds. Their robes are elegant, often tailored. They have sigils and insignias. Their lightsabers are works of art, elegant, unique, often with designs that reflect their personality. They are very publicly the heroes of the age, and they look the part. Now, let's talk about the man himself, Yoda. You know him as the ancient, wise, backwards-talking little green guru on a swamp planet. But right now, he's about 500 years old, which for his species is, well, we don't really know, but he's not the elder yet. He's in what you might call his middle age. He's a senior Jedi Master. He's on the Council. He's respected, but he's not the Grand Master. That title belongs to a wise woman named Laru during this time. This is Yoda's prime. He's active, he's out in the galaxy. He's on the front lines of this new age of exploration. Imagine Yoda not as the cryptic sage, but as a master teacher, full of energy, guiding the next generation of Jedi with a twinkle in his eye and maybe even a bit of a spring in his step. He's seen centuries of conflict, and to see the Jedi and the Republic in such a state of grace, it must have felt like a reward. This is the dream he's been fighting for his whole life. The Jedi of this era are defined by a few key things. First, the Starlight Beacon. This is the ultimate symbol of the High Republic. It's not a weapon, it's a space station, but it's more than that. It's a marvel of engineering and a monument to the Jedi's ideals. It's a massive space station located way out on the edge of the frontier, in the Outer Rim. It serves as a lighthouse, a navigational hub, a disaster relief center, a diplomatic outpost, and a Jedi temple, all rolled into one. Its light, both literal and metaphorical, shines into the unknown, a promise of safety and hope. It's their way of saying, we are here. You are not alone. The very idea of it is breathtakingly noble. Second, their relationship with the Republic. It's a true partnership. The Chancellor is a woman named Lina So, and her motto is, we are all the Republic. She and the Jedi work hand in hand. The Jedi aren't tools of the government. They're partners in the great project of civilization. They're helping to chart the new hyperspace lanes on amazing ships, like the Ataraxia, a Jedi vector ship that looks like a work of art. Third, their approach to the Force. This might be the biggest difference. The prequel-era Jedi are afraid of the dark side. The High Republic Jedi are in love with the light. They focus on empathy, compassion, and connection. A great example is a Jedi power that becomes common in this era, Force healing. Jedi like Exar Kun use the Force to truly connect with and mend wounds, to heal the sick. It's a power that requires immense empathy and selflessness. It's the opposite of a Force lightning. It's giving of your own life energy to help another. That tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. They're not naive. They know the darkness exists, but they confront it with light, not with fear. When they face a threat, Their first instinct isn't to draw their lightsaber, it's to understand, to help, to heal. Of course, they have their rock stars. This is the era of legendary Jedi, whose names would be remembered for centuries. Avar Kriss, the quintessential Jedi Knight. She's basically a superhero, a master pilot, an incredible warrior, and her connection to the Force is so profound, she perceives it as a great galactic symphony where every living thing is an instrument. She is the heart of the Starlight Beacon. Elzar Mann, a brilliant, passionate and unconventional thinker. He's incredibly powerful, but struggles with the rigid aspects of the code. He's a dreamer, an innovator, always pushing the boundaries of what the Force can do. He's the best of the Order, but he also represents the tiny cracks that might one day form. Stellan Gios, the diplomat, the idealist. He is the public face of the Jedi, unwavering in his belief in their mission and their code. He's what every youngling aspires to be. Bel Zettifer, a young Padawan, full of heart and dedication. Seeing the era through his eyes shows us the wonder and the hope of it all. This era is so compelling because it shows us what the Jedi were meant to be. It makes their fall in the prequels so much more tragic. You see what was lost. This isn't an Order that's afraid of its own shadow. It's an Order that casts a very, very large light. But, and there's always a but, even the brightest light casts a shadow. The very act of expansion, of shining their beacon into the unknown, means they're going to find things that weren't ready to be found. The frontier is called the frontier for a reason. It's wild, it's lawless, and there are things out there that don't want the light. The expansion threatens the power of warlords and pirates who liked things the way they were. And in the dark, cold voids between the stars, new threats begin to stir, awakened by the noise and light of the Republic's progress. The Jedi's greatest strength, their optimism, their openness, is also a vulnerability. They can't imagine an enemy that would truly want to shatter so much good. The High Republic is the Jedi at their peak. It's the beautiful, shining, hopeful dream. It's the proof that the ideals of the Jedi Code, when applied with compassion and courage instead of fear and dogma, can create a golden age. For Yoda, living through this, it must have been the highlight of his centuries of life. To see the Order he loved not just surviving, but thriving, not as warriors, but as healers and explorers. It makes his later years, sitting in a degraded, fearful temple, waiting for a prophecy to save them, all the more heartbreaking. He knew what they had been, he knew what they had lost. Progress has a cost, expansion has consequences, and the first consequence was catastrophic. It was called the Great Hyperspace Disaster. Imagine the biggest, most advanced starship the Republic has ever built. The Legacy Run, a massive transport, a symbol of this new era, packed with people and cargo, charting a new path through hyperspace. Now, imagine something going wrong. Not a mechanical failure, something stranger. It emerges from hyperspace too early. It doesn't drop out, it fragments. It tears itself apart. And the debris, it doesn't float there. It gets caught in the hyperspace lane. And then it gets shot back into hyperspace like cosmic shrapnel. This is the Great Hyperspace Disaster. Chunks of the Legacy Run, some the size of cities, are flying down established hyperspace lanes at relativistic speeds. They emerge from hyperspace without warning, smashing into planets, space stations, other ships. It's not a battle, it's a force of nature. It's like a hurricane made of wreckage tearing through the heart of the Republic. The scale of the destruction is unimaginable. Whole worlds are scarred. Thousands, millions die in an instant. The hyperspace lanes, the very arteries of the Republic, become killing fields. Travel and communication, the lifeblood of this golden age, grind to a halt. The Jedi response is immediate, and all hands on deck. This is what the Starlight Beacon was built for. Jedi Vectors, the sleek starfighters of the era, become search and rescue vehicles. Jedi use the Force not to fight, but to find survivors buried under miles of rubble. They use their lightsabers as cutting tools to free people. Healers like Jedi Master Jora Mali work until they collapse, mending broken bodies. This is the Jedi ideal in action. Compassion in the face of chaos. But the disaster is just the opening act. It's the quake. The tsunami is what follows. Because the disaster created a power vacuum and a galaxy of chaos, and into that chaos slithers the first real enemy of the High Republic, the Nihil. If the Jedi are the ultimate expression of order and light, the Nihil are the ultimate expression of chaos and selfishness. They're not an army, they're not a government, they're space pirates, but that word is too small for them. They're a cult of anarchy. They believe in nothing except their own freedom to take what they want. Their leader is a mysterious figure called the Eye. No one knows who he is, but his lieutenants, the Tempest Runners, are brutal and effective. And the rank and file? They're a hodgepodge of opportunists, exiles, and true believers in chaos, united under a terrifying advantage. Paths. See, the hyperspace disaster made everyone terrified of hyperspace. The Republic has to slow down, be cautious. The Nihil? They laugh at caution. Their navigators, called Pathfinders, have a seemingly impossible ability. They can plot hyperspace routes that are supposed to be suicidal. They can jump into the middle of a system bypassing all defenses. They can appear out of nowhere, strike and vanish before anyone can respond. It's like they have a map of hyperspace that no one else does. Their attacks are ruthless. They don't just raid for loot, they sow terror. They hit refugee convoys fleeing the disaster. They attack the Jedi relief efforts. They are sharks in the water, smelling blood. The Jedi, for the first time in centuries, are facing an enemy that doesn't fight with honor, doesn't want to negotiate, and can't be predicted. How do you mediate with a hurricane? The Jedi are forced to become warriors again, but it goes against their entire being in this era. Knights like Avar Kriss and Elzar Mann are brilliant generals, but you can see the conflict in them. They are healers being forced to fight a disease that enjoys being a disease. Just when the Jedi are reeling from the Nihil, the universe decides to throw another problem at them, a much weirder one. From the deepest, darkest parts of the wild space the Republic is trying to explore, another threat emerges. The Drengir. The Drengir are, well, they're a nightmare. Imagine if a plant decided it wanted to eat you. They are sentient, carnivorous vines and tendrils. A hive mind of hungry vegetation. They are a primal ancient evil. They don't have politics, they don't have goals, they just have hunger. They are a threat that lightsabers are almost useless against. You can cut one vine and two more grow back. They spread like a weed, consuming everything in their path. They represent the wild, untamable darkness of the galaxy that the Republic's expansion is accidentally stirring up. Fighting the Drengir is a whole different kind of war. It's not a battle of strategy, it's a battle of ecosystems. The Jedi have to use the Force in new ways, not to connect and heal, but to purify and burn. It's a grim, dirty, terrifying fight against a literally mindless enemy. So picture the situation for the Jedi. They are leading the largest relief effort in history after the Great Hyperspace disaster. They are fighting a shadow war against the Nihil, a chaotic enemy that can strike anywhere without warning. They are trying to contain an apocalyptic plant monster invasion. This is the crisis of the High Republic. This is the pressure that tests their golden age. And it's in this pressure that we see the first tiny cracks in the Jedi Order. We see it in Elzar Mann. He's a genius, but he's unorthodox. He starts to bend the rules. He delves into darker, more aggressive uses of the Force to fight these threats. He's not falling to the dark side, but he's dancing awfully close to the edge, because he feels like the serene traditional methods aren't enough. He represents the fear that to fight monsters, you might have to become a little monstrous yourself. We see it in the Council. The wise Grandmaster Laru and others are faced with impossible choices. Do they pull Jedi from healing the disaster to fight the Nihil? Do they ignore the Drengir to protect core worlds? There are no good answers. The Nihil, in particular, are a psychological blow. They are a mockery of the Jedi's ideals. The Jedi believe in connection. The Nihil believe only in themselves. The Jedi believe in light. The Nihil operate from shadows. The Jedi are trying to save the galaxy. The Nihil are trying to loot its corpse. The High Republic crises prove that peace is not a passive state. It's not a default. It's something you have to fight for every single day. This era doesn't shatter the Jedi. In fact, it shows how incredibly resilient they are. They face these three apocalyptic threats simultaneously, and they don't break. They adapt, they fight, they heal, they endure. But it changes them. It hardens them, just a little. It introduces a note of caution into their symphony. It proves that the darkness hasn't been defeated. It's just been waiting in the unknown, in the form of ruthless marauders and ancient horrors. For Yoda, Living through this, it must have been a profound lesson. He sees the Jedi at their absolute best, responding to the disaster with compassion and courage. And he sees them at their most strained, struggling to fight an enemy that embodies chaos. It teaches him that the Jedi's work is never done. The light requires constant vigilance. It's about 32 years before the Battle of Yavin. The Republic is comfortable. It's big, it's bureaucratic, it's a little corrupt, and it's mostly at peace. The Jedi Order is the same. They're respected, they're powerful, they're the guardians of peace and justice. But they've also gotten institutional. They spend a lot of time in their beautiful temple on Coruscant, mediating trade disputes and advising senators. They're like the galaxy's most prestigious police force. The idea of a real, galaxy-shaking threat feels like ancient history. They've gotten so used to the light, they've forgotten how to see in the dark. And in the shadows, the Sith have been patient. 1,000 years of patience. Darth Sidious is now the Chancellor. His apprentice, Darth Maul, is a weapon of pure hatred, honed to a razor's edge. The grand plan is in its final, exquisite stages. All they need is a catalyst. A crisis that will show the Republic how weak it is. That will give Sidious the emergency powers he needs to start his rise. They find that catalyst in a place nobody would expect, the quiet, beautiful world of Naboo. Naboo is the perfect target. It's politically important. It's the home of the current Chancellor, Finis Valorum. But it's not a military power. It's known for its art, its culture, its natural beauty. It's the last place anyone would expect an invasion, which is exactly why Sidious picks it. He gets the Trade Federation, a massive corporate entity he secretly controls, to stage a blockade. Big scary battleships orbiting a peaceful planet. It's an act of raw corporate aggression. The Republic's Senate is useless. It's so mired in procedure and bureaucracy and corruption that it can't do anything. They decide to send 2 Jedi to mediate, because that's what Jedi do now. They're mediators. The Jedi they send are Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And this right here, this pairing, is where the story really starts. Qui-Gon Jinn is different. He's a Jedi Master, but he's not a company man. The Jedi Council respects his power and skill, but they find him difficult, unpredictable. He follows the will of the Force like a compass, even when it points away from the Council's orders. He's not rebellious, he's just deeply, spiritually independent. He believes in the living Force, the Force as it exists in the present moment, guiding actions here and now. This often puts him at odds with the Council, who are more focused on the big picture, the prophecies, the future. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, is the perfect Jedi Padawan. He's by the book. He believes in the code. He respects the Council. He's diligent, smart, and a little bit rigid. He loves and respects Qui-Gon, but he's often frustrated by his master's maverick ways. They're a perfect odd couple. They arrive at the Trade Federation blockade, and immediately, everything is wrong. They're not there to mediate. They're there to be assassinated. The Federation, on Sidious's orders, pumps poison gas into their ship and then sends in battle droids to finish the job. This is the first hint. Since when do trade disputes involve assassinating Jedi? Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan escape, of course. They're Jedi. They fight their way down to the planet's surface. And this is where they meet the second key player, Queen Amidala. Padme Amidala is 14 years old. She's her elected queen, and she carries herself with a wisdom and gravity far beyond her years. She's proud, she's fierce, and she's desperate to save her people. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan become her protectors. The invasion of Naboo is a brutal, clinical affair. Battle droids march through the beautiful streets of Theed. The Naboo are artists and pilots, not soldiers. They're easily overwhelmed. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and the Queen's guards fight a desperate running battle to escape the planet. This is where the second, much bigger hint happens. Their ship is damaged, escaping the blockade. They need to land somewhere remote for repairs. Qui-Gon follows the Force, and it leads them to a dust ball on the Outer Rim. A planet so poor and forgotten, it's not even on most charts. Tatooine. On Tatooine, everything changes. While getting parts, Qui-Gon meets a slave boy, a little kid with a weird haircut and eyes full of dreams. His name is Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin is impossible. He's a mechanical genius. He built his own protocol droid. He's the only human who can pilot a pod racer. and his connection to the Force. Qui-Gon has never felt anything like it. The Force screams around this boy. He is off the charts. Qui-Gon does a midi-chlorian test, a measure of Force potential, and the count is higher than even Yoda's. It's supposed to be impossible. Anakin is also kind, selfless, and desperate for a better life. He believes he can help people. He tells Qui-Gon that his dream is to come back and free all the slaves. Meeting Anakin is a seismic event for Qui-Gon. He sees in this boy the fulfillment of an ancient Jedi prophecy, the Chosen One, who is destined to bring balance to the Force. For the audience, for the Jedi, for the galaxy, this is the first crack of thunder in a sky that's been silent for 1,000 years. Qui-Gon brings Anakin with them. They get to Coruscant. Qui-Gon goes straight to the Jedi Council. He tells them two things that blow their minds. The Sith have returned. I have found the Chosen One. The Council's reaction is a masterclass in institutional denial. They are the definition of this isn't happening. Regarding the Sith, they are skeptical. 1,000 years of peace will do that to you. They think maybe it was just a dark side user. They can't bring themselves to believe their ancient enemy is back. It's too terrifying to contemplate. Regarding Anakin, they are hesitant. They see his power, but they also see his fear, his attachment to his mother. He's too old. He's not been raised in the temple. He's messy. They sense a great deal of danger in him. Yoda, in particular, feels the clouded future around the boy. They refuse to train him. Qui-Gon, defiant, tells them he will take the boy as his own Padawan, with or without their permission. This causes a rift. Obi-Wan, the perfect Jedi, is hurt. He's nearly finished his training. He's ready to be a knight, and now his master is talking about replacing him with this. This is the Jedi Order's fatal flaw in action. They are so bound by their rules and their traditions that they can't see the miracle and the threat right in front of them. Qui-Gon, the outlier, is the only one who sees clearly. The Queen, meanwhile, addresses the Senate. It's a disaster. Chancellor Valorum is weak. The Trade Federation's representatives lie with impunity. The bureaucracy is utterly useless. It's Senator Palpatine, the kindly, seemingly humble senator from Naboo, who suggests a vote of no confidence in Valorum so a new, stronger chancellor can be elected. He, of course, would never want the job, wink wink. Seeing that the Republic won't help her, Queen Amidala decides to go back to Naboo and free her people herself. The Jedi are assigned to protect her. The final act is the Battle of Naboo. It's a three-pronged attack. The Naboo pilots and their new Gungan allies will fight a space battle to take down the droid control ship. The Queen's guards will storm the palace to capture the Trade Federation leaders. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan will face the Sith Lord. The ground battle happens. The space battle happens. But the heart of the crisis is in the Theed Palace generator complex. That's where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan confront Darth Maul. The energy shields drop. They duel. And in a heartbreaking moment, Maul makes a lightning-fast move. He spears Qui-Gon Jinn through the chest with his lightsaber. Obi-Wan, seeing his master murdered, explodes with a rage he's never felt. For a moment, he doesn't fight like a Jedi. He fights like a Sith. With passion, with anger, with hate. He disarms Maul, literally. He cuts his lightsaber in half, and then slices him in two, sending him falling down a bottomless shaft. The day is won. The Trade Federation is defeated. Naboo is free. But the cost is immense. Qui-Gon Jinn is dead. The one Jedi who truly understood the living Force, who believed in the prophecy, who saw the Sith threat clearly, is gone. With his dying breath, he makes Obi-Wan promise to train the boy. He believes it is the will of the Force. Obi-Wan, now a Jedi Knight, goes back to the Council. He tells them he will honor his master's wish. He will train Anakin. The Council, shamed by Qui-Gon's death and the proof of the Sith's return, reluctantly agrees. Yoda gives his permission, but with a heavy heart and a grave warning. Clouded, this boy's future is. The galaxy is fractured. The separatist movement, led by Count Dooku, has become a full-blown military power with a seemingly infinite droid army. The Republic is terrified, paralyzed by its own bureaucracy. Then, out of nowhere, a miracle. A fully grown, fully trained clone army appears on the remote planet of Kamino. It's ready to fight. The Jedi didn't order it, but they're sure not going to look a gift bantha in the mouth. In a moment of pure panic, the Senate gives Chancellor Palpatine emergency powers, and his first act is to activate this army. And who does he put in charge of leading it? The Jedi. Stop and think about the genius of this move. The Sith Lord, secretly controlling both sides, hands the army he commissioned to his greatest enemies. He makes them generals. He forces the peacekeepers to become warmongers. It's the most beautiful, twisted irony in the galaxy. Overnight, the Jedi Order undergoes a fundamental change. They exchange their robes for body armor. They leave the meditation chambers for the war room. Their lightsabers are no longer symbols of peace. They are weapons of war. They are given military ranks: General Kenobi, General Skywalker, Commander Cody, Commander Rex. This is a catastrophe for the Jedi soul. Their entire philosophy is built on defense, protection, and de-escalation. The Clone Wars forced them into constant offense. They are now responsible for tactical decisions. They plan invasions. They order orbital bombardments. They send men, clones, men with names and personalities, to die for objectives. And this is the second layer of the trap: the clones themselves. They are the perfect soldiers, loyal, brave, and utterly obedient. The Jedi can't help but bond with them. They fight alongside them, eat with them, joke with them. They learn their names, their quirks. Anakin forms a deep brotherhood, especially Captain Rex. Obi-Wan has a profound respect and friendship with Commander Cody. This connection is a poison. It makes the Jedi care deeply for the very army that is programmed to destroy them. Every clone death isn't just a statistic, it's a personal loss. The grief and anger from those losses feed directly into the dark side. The war is systematically hardening the Jedi, making them angry, fearful, and attached, the three things they are supposed to avoid above all else. And at the center of this storm is Anakin Skywalker. The Clone Wars are his element. Finally, his recklessness, his need for action, his sheer power have a legitimate outlet. He is a phenomenal general, the hero with no fear. He pulls off impossible victories, but the war is also corrupting him at an accelerated rate. It validates his worst instincts. His attachment to his men turns into a raging hatred for the droids and the separatists who kill them. His compassion curdles into a desire for vengeance. The Jedi Code tells him to let go of his emotions, but the war and the Chancellor tell him his emotions are his greatest weapon. Then there's Ahsoka Tano. The Council, in a move of stunning tone deafness, decides the best way to teach the emotionally volatile Anakin responsibility is to give him a teenage Padawan. Ahsoka is a spark of brilliant, untamed energy. She's everything the Jedi say they want but are secretly afraid of: passionate, questioning, and loyal to a fault. Their relationship becomes the heart of the war. It's not a traditional master-Padawan dynamic, it's a partnership between two siblings in arms. Anakin trains her his way, by breaking the rules, trusting instincts, and prioritizing the mission and each other above all else. He teaches her to be a brilliant warrior, but he also teaches her his cynicism and his distrust of the Council. Ahsoka, in turn, is his anchor to the light. She believes in him utterly. She sees the hero, not the deeply troubled man. Protecting her becomes his primary motivation, even above the war itself. This intense attachment is a violation of the Jedi Code, but it's also the only thing keeping him from tipping over the edge completely. The war itself is a galaxy-wide grind. It's a relentless series of campaigns on 1,000 different worlds. One week they're in the crystalline caves of Christophsis, the next they're in the muddy trenches of Megiddo, then the gladiatorial arenas of Geonosis. The enemy is endless. For every droid you destroy, a factory makes 10 more. The Jedi are constantly exhausted, stretched thinner and thinner. They investigate ancient Sith temples. They negotiate with crime lords like Hondo Ohnaka. They try to uncover the mystery of the Sith Lord behind the war, but they're always pulled back to the front lines. The war doesn't allow them to be anything else for long, and all the while, the man behind the curtain is watching, Chancellor Palpatine. To the galaxy, he's the wise, steadfast leader, steering the Republic through its darkest hour. To the Separatists, he's Darth Sidious, pulling Dooku's strings. He is playing both sides perfectly. He also begins his seduction of Anakin in earnest. He becomes a father figure. He praises him, listens to his frustrations about the Jedi Council, validates his anger, and tells him that his power is a gift to be embraced, not a burden to be controlled. He is systematically isolating Anakin from the Jedi, all while wearing the face of a benevolent friend. The Jedi Council isn't completely blind. They feel the dark side growing. They feel the war clouding their vision. Yoda feels the future becoming dark and difficult to see, but they are trapped. They can't withdraw from the war because the separatists would win. So they double down. They become more consumed by the military effort. They become soldiers, and in doing so, they forget how to be Jedi. Their compassion is replaced by cold strategy. Their wisdom is replaced by tactical calculations. The true breaking point for the soul of the Order comes with the case of Ahsoka Tano. When she is falsely accused of bombing the Jedi Temple, the Council doesn't stand by her. Fearful of losing the public's trust and desperate for a quick resolution, they expel her from the Order and hand her over to the Republic courts to face execution. They choose the institution over the individual. They abandon one of their own to preserve their image. Anakin is the only one who never gives up on her. He proves her innocence, but the damage is done. Ahsoka, heartbroken and utterly disillusioned, is offered her place back in the Order, and she walks away. She looks at the Jedi Temple and says, "I am no Jedi." This moment shatters Anakin. The Jedi he loved, the family he believed in, betrayed his apprentice, his sister. They proved themselves to be hypocrites, more concerned with politics than with truth. Ahsoka's departure is the first major crack in his faith. The Clone Wars are the greatest trick the Sith ever pulled. Darth Sidious didn't just build an army to kill the Jedi, he built a system to make the Jedi destroy themselves. He made them complicit in their own downfall. He made them trade their lightsabers for blasters. He made them trade meditation for military command. He made them trade compassion for collateral damage. He made them bond with the very soldiers programmed to kill them. The war was a box. The Jedi climbed inside it, and the clone army was the lid. For 3 long years, the Jedi fought a war designed to grind them down, to make them angry, to make them fearful, to make them attached. It turned their greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. They were so busy being generals, they forgot how to be Jedi. And by the time the war ended, they were so weakened, so compromised, so blind that they never saw the final command coming. They never heard the click of the trap they had been living in for 3 years. The Clone Wars weren't a war the Jedi fought, they were the poison they drank. And Order 66 was just the final bitter swallow. Okay, this is it. The moment everything breaks. We've been building to this for thousands of years of history. The Clone Wars are raging. The Jedi are at their most stretched, their most weary. They're scattered across the galaxy, embedded with their clone troopers, fighting 100 different battles. They're tired, they're emotionally raw from years of loss, and their connection to the Force is clouded by the dark side energy Palpatine is radiating. They can't see the trap. They're standing right in the middle of it. The stage is set on Coruscant. There's a massive separatist attack. Chancellor Palpatine has been kidnapped by General Grievous. It's a crisis. Anakin and Obi-Wan stage a daring rescue, fighting their way through the separatist flagship. They find Palpatine, and they confront Count Dooku. Anakin, goaded by Palpatine, executes Dooku in cold blood. It's a pivotal moment, the first time he takes a definitive step across the line, murdering a defenseless prisoner. The darkness feels good to him. It feels like justice. They return to Coruscant as heroes, but Palpatine is now closer than ever to Anakin. He offers him a place on the Jedi Council, driving a wedge between Anakin and the other Masters. The Council agrees, but refuses to grant him the rank of Master. They sense his anger, his fear. They distrust him. This rejection is a gift to Palpatine. It makes Anakin feel like an outsider in his own home. Meanwhile, Anakin is having visions. Visions of his wife, Padme, dying in childbirth. He's terrified. This is his greatest fear, losing the one person he loves most. The Jedi teachings offer him nothing. Let go of what you fear to lose. That's a meaningless mantra to a man facing his worst nightmare. Palpatine sees his opening. He begins to weave his final masterful manipulation. He reveals to Anakin that the dark side holds powers some consider to be unnatural. The power to cheat death, to save Padme's life. He's offering Anakin the one thing he desperately wants, the one thing the Jedi cannot and will not give him: hope. Anakin is torn apart. He's loyal to the Jedi, but he's loyal to Padme above all else. He goes to Mace Windu and tells him that Palpatine is the Sith Lord they've been looking for. This is Anakin's last desperate attempt to be a Jedi. He does the right thing. Mace Windu assembles a strike team and goes to arrest the Chancellor. The fight that follows is brutal. Palpatine, Darth Sidious, reveals himself completely. He's not a frail old man. He's a whirlwind of dark side energy, a nightmare with a lightsaber. He kills the Jedi Masters with ease, until it's just him and Mace. Anakin arrives, as Palpatine knew he would. He sees Mace Windu about to kill the Chancellor. Palpatine is on the ground, pleading, looking weak, unleashing a torrent of Force lightning that deflects back at him, grotesquely disfiguring his face. Mace says the only logical thing: he's too dangerous to be left alive, and Anakin makes his choice. He doesn't choose the dark side. He doesn't choose power for its own sake. He chooses Padme. In that split second, he believes that Palpatine is the only one who can save her. So, he betrays everything. He slices off Mace Windu's hand, and Palpatine finishes him with a blast of lightning, throwing him out the window to his death. It's done. The line is crossed. Anakin Skywalker is dead. In his place is Darth Vader. Palpatine doesn't waste a second. He has his new apprentice, and he initiates the final phase of his plan. Across the galaxy, in 100 different star systems, a simple, pre-recorded message is transmitted to every clone commander. Good soldiers follow orders, and in an instant the entire Grand Army of the Republic turns on its generals. This is the horror of it. It's not a battle, it's a massacre. The clones don't hesitate. The biochips in their brains override everything. Their friendships, their memories, their loyalties. They are programmed to comply. On the forest planet of Kashyyyk, Yoda feels the disturbance in the Force first. A sudden, terrible shift. A clone squad immediately opens fire on him and the Wookiee chieftain Tarful. On the planet Cato Neimoidia, Plo Koon's own clone wingman shoots his Jedi starfighter out of the sky without a second thought. On a remote moon, Jedi Master Stas Ali is blown off her speeder bike by her own troops. It happens everywhere, all at once. The Jedi are taken completely by surprise. They are cut down by the men they fought beside, laughed with, trusted with their lives. The betrayal is absolute. It is the most devastatingly effective military operation in history. The Jedi are nearly wiped out in a matter of minutes. The few who survive are those who are uniquely powerful, incredibly lucky, or not with their troops at that exact moment. Yoda feels the deaths. He feels the light in the galaxy being snuffed out, one life at a time. He barely escapes Kashyyyk. Obi-Wan, thrown from his Varactyl mount by the artillery blast, survives the fall and goes into hiding. On Coruscant, at the Jedi Temple, the true nightmare unfolds. Darth Vader, the newly christened Sith Lord, leads the 501 Legion, his legion, the troopers he called brothers, in an assault on the Jedi Temple itself. He marches up the steps with the clones, his blue lightsaber now replaced with a Sith red one. He cuts down everyone inside, Jedi Masters, Knights, and the younglings hiding in the council chamber, the very children he was once tasked to protect. He massacres his own family to prove his loyalty to his new master. He is sealing his fall in blood. The temple is set ablaze. The heart of the Jedi Order for 1,000 generations is violated and burned. The archives are seized or destroyed. It is a symbolic and literal annihilation. Palpatine, simultaneously, addresses the Senate. He lies. He tells them the Jedi Rebellion has been foiled, that the Jedi attempted to assassinate him and take over the Republic, that their treachery has been met with justice. He declares the Republic to be the first galactic empire, with himself as emperor. The crowd, fearful and manipulated, cheers. The democracy that had stood for 1,000 years dies to thunderous applause. The Great Jedi Purge has begun. The few survivors are now the most wanted beings in the galaxy. Any record of the Jedi is erased, their history turned into a myth, then a fairy tale, then a forgotten memory. The light of the Jedi is extinguished. The Sith have won, not through a fair fight, but through deception, patience, and the most profound betrayal imaginable. Order 66 is the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith planning. It is the perfect revenge. It used the Jedi's own compassion, their willingness to lead, to bond with their troops, as the weapon that killed them. They were destroyed by the very army they thought they commanded. The galaxy has changed overnight. The Republic is gone. The Empire is born. The Jedi are now enemies of the state. Their temples are seized, their history is erased. Their very name is turned into a curse. They're not heroes, they're traitors. The clones they fought alongside are now stormtroopers, hunting them without mercy. The public, fed lies by Palpatine, fears them or believes they're extinct. For the survivors, the first feeling isn't grief, it's sheer animal disorientation. The world you swore to protect now wants you dead. The connection to the Force that has always guided you is now a screaming chorus of pain as you feel your friends and family die across the galaxy. It's a psychic shock that would break most people. They scatter. There's no plan, no rally point. It's every Jedi for themselves. The only imperative is to disappear. Let's start with the big ones. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. They are among the very last ones standing. They meet in the aftermath on the remote world of Polis Massa. The scene is one of the most devastating in the entire saga. These two pillars of the Order, these legendary masters, are now broken old men. They've just witnessed the complete annihilation of everything they dedicated their lives to. They feel the weight of every single death. They have one last duty to perform. They witness the birth of the twins, Luke and Leia. In the midst of this galactic funeral, there is new life. Padme dies, but her children live. And in that they find not victory, but a purpose, a tiny fragile ember of hope. They make a plan. It's not a plan to fight back. Not yet. The fight is over and they lost. The plan is to protect this ember, to hide it and themselves until the time is right. They decide to go into exile. Yoda goes to the swamp planet of Dagobah. It's a brilliant choice. The planet is steeped in the dark side. Its cave, its creatures. That dark side energy acts like a cosmic fog, masking his powerful light side presence from the Emperor and his hunters. He will live there, alone, with his failure and his grief. Obi-Wan's exile is even more profound. He takes baby Luke to Tatooine, to the boy's only living family. The great Jedi Master, the negotiator, the man who dueled Darth Maul and General Grievous, becomes a hermit. He takes the name Ben, puts away his lightsaber, and watches over the boy from a distance. He becomes a lonely, strange figure on the edge of the Dune Sea. He lives with the ghost of his best friend, the man he loved like a brother, whom he failed to save and was forced to mutilate and leave for dead. The Inquisitors, the Emperor's Jedi hunters, are often these fallen Jedi themselves. They were broken by the Purge and offered a choice, serve or die. They chose to serve, turning their pain against their former brothers and sisters. They become twisted, dark side users, with spinning, double-bladed lightsabers, hunting the very people they once called family. Their existence is a warning of what happens when hope dies. Then there are the ones who just vanish. They don't become Inquisitors. They don't hold on to the Jedi Code. They shed their identity completely. They become farmers, mechanics, freight pilots. They bury their past so deep they almost forget it themselves. They live in constant low-grade fear, jumping at every Imperial patrol, never using the Force, never connecting to anyone. Their lives are a half-life, a prison of their own making. The Purge didn't kill them, but it killed who they were. A rare few find a different path. They can't be Jedi anymore. The Order is gone, and its dogma failed. But they won't fall to the dark side either. They try to hold on to the core of what it meant to be a Jedi, compassion, protection, without the rules and the hierarchy. The most famous of these is Kanan Jarrus. He was a Padawan when Order 66 happened, just a kid named Caleb Dume. His master sacrificed herself to save him. He survived by running, and he never stopped running. He buried his lightsaber, changed his name, and became a smuggler, a drifter. He was cynical, rough around the edges, and wanted nothing to do with the Jedi or the Force. This period, these 19 years, are the dark times. The Empire's shadow stretches across every system. The Jedi are a ghost story. The hope that Obi-Wan and Yoda placed in the twins is just that, a hope, a theory. There is no rebellion yet. There is just the crushing weight of Imperial rule and the silent, desperate hiding of the last fragments of the light. The dark times have lasted for nearly 2 decades. The Empire's grip is absolute. The Jedi are a forgotten myth. The embers of hope that Obi-Wan and Yoda guarded are just that, tiny glowing coals buried under a mountain of ash. But ash is where new things grow. This is the story of the galactic civil war. It's the story of a farm boy, a princess, a smuggler, and a machine that remembers it was once a man. It starts, as these things often do, with a spark. A tiny, desperate act of defiance. Princess Leia Organa, the adopted daughter of Bail Organa of Alderaan, is a senator and a secret leader in the budding Rebel Alliance. She gets her hands on the technical plans for the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, a battle station the size of a moon, built to destroy planets. She's captured by the Empire, but not before she hides the plans in a droid and sends it to the one person her father told her to find if things went wrong, an old man named Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine. This is where our farm boy comes in. Luke Skywalker. He's not a Jedi, he's not a soldier. He's a kid who dreams of joining the Imperial Academy to get off his dustball planet. He's whiny, impatient, and utterly unaware of his own destiny. He buys 2 droids from Jawas, and one of them, R2-D2, keeps running off, insisting he has a message for a man named Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke gets attacked by sand people and is saved by the very hermit he's looking for, old Ben Kenobi. This is the moment the waiting ends. Obi-Wan sees the boy, Anakin's son, and he sees the hope he's been guarding for 19 years. He gives Luke his father's lightsaber. He tells him a story about a noble Jedi Knight betrayed and murdered by the Empire. He tells him about the Force. Luke is skeptical. It's all a fairy tale to him. But then, he comes home to find his aunt and uncle murdered by stormtroopers, looking for the droids. His old life is literally burned to the ground. He has nothing left to lose. He makes a choice. He tells Obi-Wan, "I want to come with you to Alderaan. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father." This is the first step. Their journey is the heart of the original hope. They hire a smuggler, Han Solo, and his co-pilot, Chewbacca. Han is the opposite of a Jedi. He doesn't believe in a higher power. He believes in luck, his ship, and money. He's in it for the cash. Their dynamic, the idealistic kid, the cynical smuggler, and the wise old man, is the core of the rebellion itself. It's not a perfect army. It's a bunch of messed up people thrown together, trying to do the right thing. They get to Alderaan. The Death Star has blown it to pieces. The Empire's evil isn't an abstract concept anymore. It's the horrifying reality that an entire world of people is just gone. They're captured by the Death Star. This is where the second key player enters, Darth Vader. He's not a Sith Lord in the shadows anymore. He's the Emperor's chief enforcer, a terrifying legend throughout the galaxy. He strides onto the Death Star, and the first thing he feels is a presence he hasn't felt in a long time. Obi-Wan Kenobi, his old master, the man he hates more than anyone in the galaxy. The reunion is inevitable. Obi-Wan creates a diversion so the others can escape. He faces Vader, but it's not the duel it should be. Obi-Wan is old, he's not there to win. He's there to complete his final lesson. As Vader strikes him down, Obi-Wan becomes one with the Force. He vanishes, leaving only his robes and his lightsaber. He becomes more powerful than Vader can possibly imagine. His death is the catalyst that pushes Luke into the fight. The rebellion, with the plans delivered by Leia, finds the Death Star's weakness. They launch a desperate, tiny attack against the massive battle station. Luke volunteers to fly an X-Wing. He's not the best pilot there, that's probably Wedge Antilles, but he has something no one else does. He has the Force, and he has a teacher. The voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi speaks to him. "Use the Force, Luke. Let go." He switches off his targeting computer, rejecting technology and trusting something deeper. He makes the impossible shot. The Death Star explodes. The rebellion wins its first major victory. Luke Skywalker is a hero, but the war has just begun. The next few years are a grinding conflict. The rebellion is on the run, moving from secret base to secret base. Luke begins his training with Yoda at his side, a mentor who somehow managed to be both the wisest being in the galaxy and the sassiest. He's trying to rebuild an entire religion from a few scraps. He's making it up as he goes along. He feels a connection to the Force, and through it, he feels a connection to a mysterious presence, the other Skywalker twin. He doesn't know it's his sister, but he knows he's not alone. And he feels a connection to the dark side, to Darth Vader. Vader becomes obsessed with the young pilot who destroyed the Death Star. The Force is strong with him. He wants to turn Luke to the dark side, overthrow the Emperor, and rule the galaxy, together as father and son. This is the central drama of the Civil War. It all comes to a head above the forest moon of Endor. The Empire is building a second Death Star, The rebellion plans a massive assault. Luke, now a Jedi Knight in all but name, walks willingly onto a shuttle and surrenders to Vader. He's not there to fight. He's there to try and save his father. He still believes there's good in him. He's the only person in the galaxy who does. He's brought before the Emperor. Palpatine is thrilled. He has the son of the Chosen One right where he wants him. He taunts Luke, provokes him, trying to get him to give in to his hatred and attack. He wants Luke to kill Vader and take his place. Vader, probing Luke's thoughts, discovers the truth Luke has been protecting. Leia is his sister. "If you will not turn to the dark side," Vader says, "then perhaps she will." That's the line, that's the trigger. Luke's fear for his sister, his anger, his hatred for Vader. It all erupts. He attacks Vader with a ferocity he's never shown. He beats him down, disarms him, and has him at his mercy. He's moments from striking him down, from giving the Emperor exactly what he wants. He looks at Vader's mechanical hand, then at his own, the hand Vader cut off in their previous duel. He sees himself becoming his father. The cycle of hatred, the dark side, it's about to claim another Skywalker. He makes a choice. He throws his lightsaber away. He stands before the Emperor, defenseless. "I am a Jedi," he says, "like my father before me." He chooses faith. He chooses compassion. He chooses to believe in the good in his father, even if it costs him his life. The Emperor is enraged. He unleashes his Force lightning on Luke, torturing him, ready to kill him. And as Luke screams in agony, Darth Vader, the monster, the enforcer, the man who has spent 20 years drowning in darkness, looks at his son being murdered to save his soul. And that soul, buried under a mountain of armor and pain, finally stirs. Anakin Skywalker makes one last choice. He picks up the Emperor and throws him down the reactor shaft. The act destroys his life support systems, but for the first time in decades, he's free. The machine is broken, but the man is saved. Luke drags his father to a shuttle. In his final moments, Anakin Skywalker looks at his son with his own eyes. Not Sith yellow eyes, human eyes. He tells him to tell his sister he was right. There was still good in him. He dies, and becomes one with the Force. The Chosen One finally finds balance. Not by destroying the Sith in anger, but by saving his son in love. The rebellion destroys the second Death Star. The Emperor is dead. The Empire is shattered. The Civil War is, for all intents and purposes, won. Now we're moving into the sequel era. And yes, as much as it's hated, it still has its rightful place in the timeline. Love it or not, these films continue the story of the Jedi. The galaxy celebrates. Luke Skywalker, the hero, the last Jedi, feels the weight of his responsibility. He knows the Jedi Order must be reborn, but he is determined not to repeat the mistakes of the old order. He doesn't want to build another insular dogmatic temple on Coruscant. He wants to learn from the past. He begins his life's work, rebuilding the Jedi Order. He searches for lore, for artifacts, for knowledge. He starts to find students, not just younglings, but Force-sensitive beings of all ages. And for a time, it works. He establishes a new Jedi temple. His sister is one of the founders of the New Republic, but she soon realizes a terrifying truth. The Empire didn't die, it crawled away into the unknown regions. It's regrouping, reforming, festering into something new, and just as dangerous. The First Order. She tries to warn the New Republic Senate, but they don't listen. They are weary of war. They see her as a warmonger, clinging to the past. So, she steps away from the government. She forms a small, unofficial resistance to keep watch on the growing threat in the shadows. Meanwhile, Luke's greatest test arrives. His sister sends her son, his nephew, to him for training. Ben Solo. Ben is powerful. The blood of the Chosen One runs strong in him, but he is also troubled. He carries the weight of his legacy, the grandson of Darth Vader. He is vulnerable, and that vulnerability is sensed by a predator. A powerful, mysterious, dark side entity named Snoke had been whispering to Ben from across the galaxy since he was in the womb. Snoke preys on Ben's feelings of inadequacy, his fear, his anger. He twists Ben's love for his family into a fear that they are ashamed of him, that they are hiding the truth of his destiny from him. Luke feels the darkness growing in his nephew. He's terrified. He's seen this story before. He's read the histories of how the old Jedi Order failed to see the darkness in their midst until it was too late. He becomes obsessed with not making the same mistake, and in a moment of ultimate weakness, he does. He looks into Ben's mind while he sleeps. He feels the immense, terrifying power of the dark side there. He sees a vision of the future, the destruction of his school, the death of his students, the end of everything he has built. He sees another Vader. In a single catastrophic moment of pure instinct, pure fear, he ignites his lightsaber. He immediately shuts it off. The shame is instant and overwhelming, but it's too late. Ben wakes up. He sees his master, his uncle, the legendary Luke Skywalker, standing over him with a lit lightsaber. The very fear that Snoke had planted in him, that his family saw him as a monster, is confirmed. In a rage of betrayal and fear, Ben lashes out. He brings the roof of his hut down and uses the Force to call his own lightsaber to his hand. He doesn't kill Luke. He walks out, and in his pain and fury, he does the very thing Luke had a vision of. He destroys the temple. He turns Luke's other students against each other. Those who aren't killed become his Knights of Ren. Ben Solo is gone. Kylo Ren is born. Luke loses everything in one night. His nephew, his students, his school, his life's work, and, he believes, his right to call himself a Jedi. His failure is absolute. He believes so completely that he could be different from the old Jedi, that he could avoid their arrogance. And in his attempt to avoid arrogance, he committed the most arrogant act imaginable. He tried to preemptively stop a fall by nearly murdering his own nephew in his sleep. He looks at the galaxy and sees a simple, brutal equation. The Jedi always rise. The Jedi always create their own enemies. The Jedi always fall and take billions of innocent people with them. The Jedi Code, for all its wisdom, cannot stop this cycle. His own love for his family wasn't enough to stop it. It was the catalyst. He comes to the only conclusion he can. The galaxy is better off without the Jedi. The only way to break the cycle is to let it end, to let the Jedi religion die. So he does the most un-Jedi thing possible. He gives up. He exiles himself to the most unfindable place in the galaxy, the first Jedi temple on the ocean world of Ahch-To. He cuts himself off from the Force. He doesn't want to be found. He wants to live out his days as a hermit, the last Jedi, so that when he dies, the Order dies with him. His self-imposed exile creates a vacuum. Without Luke Skywalker, without a Jedi Order, the light has no champion. The galaxy is on the brink. The resistance, led by General Leia Organa, is shattered, reduced to a handful of survivors on the Millennium Falcon after the First Order's devastating attack. Hope is a ghost. The only flicker of light is a girl, a scavenger from the junkyard planet of Jakku named Rey. Rey is nobody. She has no famous last name. She was sold for drinking money and left to wait for a family that was never coming back. But she is also immensely, rawly powerful in the Force. She finds the exiled Luke Skywalker on Ahch-To, begging him to return. What she finds is not a legend. She finds a broken, bitter old man. He's a hermit, hiding from the galaxy and from the Force itself. He rejects her. He rejects the lightsaber she offers him, his father's lightsaber. He tells her the Jedi must end. He delivers the most devastating line in the sequel trilogy, born from a lifetime of guilt. Now that they're extinct, the Jedi are romanticized, deified. But if you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Jedi is failure. He is the ultimate symbol of hope, and he has given up. But Rey is stubborn. She starts exploring the island herself. She feels the Force there, in the ocean, in the rain, in the ancient tree that holds the original Jedi texts. She teaches herself, driven by a power she doesn't understand. She is the anti-Jedi. She wasn't found as a child, she chose this. She isn't trained to release her emotions, she is powered by them. Her loneliness, her desire to belong, her anger. Luke, reluctantly, is drawn back in. He sees her raw power. He sees her connection to Kylo Ren through the Force, a connection of conflict and strange empathy. He agrees to give her 3 lessons. He teaches her about the arrogance of the old order. He tells her about Ben Solo's turn, and in doing so, he confesses his own monstrous failure. He doesn't paint himself as a hero. He paints himself as the man who created Kylo Ren. He is trying to scare her away from the path. But Rey sees something else. She sees a man trapped by his one terrible mistake. She doesn't want to be like the old Jedi. She wants to be better. She believes Ben Solo can be turned back, just as his grandfather was. She believes in compassion, not dogma. Their time is cut short. Rey, seeking answers about her parents, is drawn into a Force connection with Kylo Ren. Snoke uses this connection to lure her to his throne room. She goes, believing she can turn Ben back to the light. What happens there changes everything. Kylo Ren kills his master, Snoke. For a breathtaking moment, he and Rey fight side by side against the Praetorian Guards. It's electric. They are a dyad in the Force, two that are one, a power like the galaxy has never seen. He offers her a vision, not to join the First Order, but to let the past die, to kill it if you have to rule the galaxy together and create something new. She refuses. When she tells Luke that she saw a spark of light in Kylo Ren, his reaction is final proof to her that he is lost to his despair. She leaves him. Luke is alone again. But then Yoda appears and, in a stunning act of tough love, burns the ancient Jedi tree. Heeded my words not, did you? Pass on what you have learned. Strength, mastery, but weakness, folly, failure also. The greatest teacher, failure is. Luke looks at the hologram of Leia's distress signal from years ago, the one that started his journey with R2. He makes a choice. He will not be the last Jedi. He will do the one thing only he can do. He will become the legend again. On the salt planet of Crate, the Resistance is cornered. All hope is lost. Then a figure walks out to meet the entire First Order army alone. Luke Skywalker. He faces down Kylo Ren. He apologizes. But Kylo is too consumed by hate. He orders every gun to fire. Luke stands there, and the lasers pass right through him. It's a projection. The greatest Force feat ever witnessed. Luke is still on Archto, meditating, channeling every ounce of his being across the galaxy. He is giving the Resistance a symbol to hope for, a story to tell. He is not there to fight, he is there to save them. And in doing so, he faces his nephew, not with a weapon, but with unconditional love and an apology. He gives them time to escape. His work done, he becomes one with the Force. He didn't teach Rey how to be a Jedi. He taught her why to be a Jedi. His final act was the most Jedi act of all. He saved the ones he loved without striking a single blow. But the war isn't over. The ultimate puppet master was behind it all. Emperor Palpatine had somehow cheated death. He was the voice in Snoke's head. He was the phantom pulling every string. He is on the hidden Sith world of Exar, building a final fleet to conquer the galaxy. Rey is training herself, using the ancient texts. She is the last student of the Jedi. She learns that her connection to Kylo Ren is an ancient Sith ritual Palpatine had engineered. And she learns the horrific truth. She is not a nobody. She is a Palpatine, the Emperor's grandchild. The final battle is on Exar. The Resistance and its allies fight a massive space battle against Palpatine's fleet. On the ground, Rey stands before the Emperor. He wants her to strike him down in anger, so his spirit can pass into her, the perfect vessel, and he will be reborn. To save her friends, she seems to do it, and the transfer begins. But just as his spirit flows into her, the healed Ben Solo, having thrown off Kylo Ren, arrives. Palpatine, enraged, attacks them both with all his power. Rey stands. She hears the voices of all the Jedi who came before her. She deflects Palpatine's own lightning back at him, and he disintegrates, finally, truly destroyed. The Sith are ended, the cycle is broken, but the cost is high. Ben Solo dies, giving his life to save hers. Rey is alone. She travels to Tatooine, to the abandoned Lars homestead. She buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers in the sand where it all began. The future is unknown. She is the last Jedi. The fate of the Order is unwritten, but for the first time in a long time, it is a story that can be written with hope, free from the shadows of the past. And now, let's just treat the whole sequel era like one weird nightmare. In reality, Luke beat Palpatine, brought Vader back to the light, and then went on to rebuild the Jedi without any of that grumpy old hermit stuff. Han and Leia, they stayed happy together, raised their kid without him turning into a space goth, and the Skywalker bloodline carried on strong.